To Mr. Olszewski.
Well, thank you, Chairman Smith, and thank you to our ranking members for holding this hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for joining us as well today. As a man of faith, I feel an obligation to point out the stark moral contradiction that we're facing as a nation. Pope Francis often cited the parable of the Good Samaritan from the Gospel of Luke, a story of a wounded traveler whose life is saved by the compassion and kindness of a passerby. That story captures a vision of a church whose first instinct is to bind wounds, lift the fallen, and stand with the vulnerable. It's a vision that I believe is embodied by the new Pope, Pope Leo, who served among the poor in Peru. For me, that parable is not a metaphor. It's a call to see that every child vulnerable to disease, every mother denied basic health care, every refugee without clean water as that wounded traveler.
All right, folks, buckle up, because what you just watched from Forbes Breaking News is a perfect example of how Washington politicians use emotion, faith language, and selective statistics to push policies that sound compassionate, but collapse the moment you apply common sense. Now, let me be very clear before the outrage machine spins up. Every child matters. Every life has value. No serious conservative disputes that. But what Congressman Olszewski just did was not a moral sermon. It was political manipulation wrapped in scripture. And that's something we absolutely need to call out. He opens by invoking Jesus, the Good Samaritan, Pope Francis, and even a new pope, and he does it for one reason: to shut down debate before it even starts. Because once you frame a policy disagreement as, you're either with Jesus or you're okay with children dying, you're no longer having an honest conversation. You're running emotional cover for bad policy.
Foreign aid cuts may lead to more than 14 million additional deaths globally by 2030, including 4.5 million children under the age of 5. These are children of God who will die of diseases we know how to prevent, mothers lost in childbirth, and families devastated by illnesses that could have been treated with basic medicine. Medicine, in some cases, that we have now destroyed. If we take the call to be Good Samaritans seriously, we must understand that our policy choices can either bind wounds, as Jesus did, or walk past them. Dr. Schneck, I want to open with you. We know that many churches, mosques, and other faith communities overseas are the ones running those clinics, caring for the sick and comforting families. I'm curious to get your thoughts on how our policies can better support those local faith efforts so that our commitment to the religious freedom we're talking about today is matched with a commitment to the physical well-being of those communities.
Thank you, Congressman. And, as you know, the programs that you're talking about have largely been defunded currently. And, as a result, organizations that relied on those funds to provide not just humanitarian assistance, but assistance to develop interfaith relations, assistance to develop civil society, those things, those cuts, I think, are potentially devastating for the protection of religious freedom around the world. And I think in my own faith, as a Roman Catholic, I very supportive of an organization called Catholic Relief Services, which provided humanitarian assistance around the world, not just to Roman Catholics, not just to Christians, but to people of all faith. A good number of their programs have been significantly underfunded now because of the cuts that the federal government has made in cooperation with Catholic Relief Services. So I share your concerns that those cuts are in fact a threat to religious freedom around the world, and I very much hope that this Congress will work to restore some of that funding.
I appreciate that. I know that my time is winding down, but I guess I'll just close by reinforcing, for me, I find myself wondering how, for me as a follower of Jesus, as other religions with similar beliefs, how are we letting that example and letting those faith examples be a guide for how we approach caring for vulnerable people beyond our borders? And I think that this conversation is important, but it's also not happening in a vacuum, and we have to sort of look at the whole person if we want to be able to address this critical issue. And I thank you all for your testimony and for your work in this space, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Here's the hard truth the mainstream media won't say out loud. U.S. foreign aid is not charity. It is a federal program funded by American taxpayers who are already struggling. Right now, Americans are dealing with crushing inflation, sky-high grocery prices, broken healthcare systems, and open southern border cities, overwhelmed by crime and homelessness. And Washington wants to tell you that the real moral crisis is that we're not sending enough billions overseas with little oversight, zero accountability, and no guarantee it even reaches the people they claim it helps. That's not compassion. That's negligence. Now let's talk about this 14 million deaths claim, because this is where the script really falls apart. We hear this every time foreign aid is questioned. If we cut funding, millions will die. Funny how the numbers are always round, massive, and impossible to verify. What they never explain is how much of that aid is lost to corruption, how much is siphoned off by hostile governments, how much props up regimes that persecute Christians and religious minorities, how much creates dependency instead of stability. And yes, that includes countries where aid money flows through governments that openly suppress religious freedom. So when Olszewski says foreign aid protects religious liberty, let me ask a real question. Why are Christians still the most persecuted religious group on earth after decades of U.S. foreign aid? If the system worked the way they claim, wouldn't we see improvement by now? And let's talk about the most offensive part of this entire argument, the idea that if America doesn't fund the world, then America is somehow walking past a wounded man. That's not biblical. That's political guilt tripping. The Good Samaritan uses own resources, voluntarily, out of personal conviction, not by forcing others to pay unfair taxation, while their own families struggle to survive. Conservatives believe in charity through churches, faith-based organizations, direct aid with accountability, local solutions over bloated bureaucracies. What we don't believe in is Washington elites laundering morality through trillion-dollar budgets, while ignoring Americans sleeping under bridges in their own districts. Now here's the part the media didn't challenge at all. Olszewski claimed supplies were destroyed instead of distributed. If that's true, and it should be fully investigated, that is government incompetence, not an argument for more unchecked spending. You don't fix waste by throwing more money at the same broken system. And when Dr. Schneck talks about organizations like Catholic Relief Services losing funding, that's tragic. But again, the answer is targeted, accountable aid, not blank checks and emotional blackmail. America can care about the world without bankrupting itself. America can be compassionate without being exploited. America can stand for life without surrendering sovereignty. And here's the reality Washington refuses to face. A nation that cannot secure its borders, care for its veterans, protect its children, or stabilize its economy cannot save the world. That's not heartless, that's responsible. Because if America collapses under debt, division, and dysfunction, there will be no aid, no leadership, and no moral example left at all. So no questioning foreign aid does not make you unchristian. It makes you serious about results. It makes you serious about accountability. And it makes you serious about putting Americans first, which is exactly what our government is supposed to do. Faith without wisdom is emotion. Compassion without responsibility is chaos. And patriotism means knowing the difference. If you agree that America can care and be smart about it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're done letting politicians weaponize faith to excuse failed policies. And comment below, should U.S. foreign aid be reformed or rein it entirely? Because this conversation is long overdue.